hear there we go. So just want to again remind folks that we are recording this meeting. All right, so before we get started, we have created our community operating agreements. This is to establish norms and create a safe space. These common agreements help respect and honor diversity of thought and inclusivity. I want to encourage folks as we're in this space, we have a lot to cover to practice curiosity and seek to understand different perspectives. Sometimes we have opposing views and that's okay. We just want to make sure that everything is done in a respectful way. So we have 5 pillars that we, agree to. So to stay engaged, what that means is, try to be engaged in what the presenters are speaking to and your fellow participants if they are asking questions or providing feedback. If you do need to step away at any time, feel free to do so. Just when you come back, just be ready to be engaged. Be willing to experience discomfort. And what we mean by that is that some people may have different perspectives, lived experience, and views. So maybe it may not sit right with you initially, but just try to sit in that and understand the other perspective and know that we will move through this. Some topics that we have can be, triggersome, maybe not in this case, but when we're talking about racial equity, equitable community engagement, lived experience. So I just want to encourage folks to be willing to sit in that discomfort. Speak your truth. Again, everyone comes with their own lived experience. So we want to honor the stories that folks are sharing or their ideas and tie that back to their lived experience, being welcoming to that. A big one, a lot of times in these PGE meetings, we have so much content to cover. So expect and accept non-closure, meaning we may not be able to get through everything today. There may not be a quick fix solution, but we will work towards getting there, and it may take longer than this meeting from 9 to 12. So just want to manage folks' expectations. We may not get through everything or be able to solution everything in today's meeting. Also, I'm doing a lot of talking, but share the airtime, meaning if folks, we notice we have a lot of people's the same voices reoccurring and speaking, we want to allow space for those who maybe haven't spoken. So just be mindful of that to share the space so other voices can be heard. So if we're all in agreement, can I please get a thumbs up? And this will also be a test to check the reaction so you know how to use it. So I'll demonstrate that. Thumbs up. If folks agree, I'm seeing thumbs. Beautiful. Great. So today's, I didn't introduce myself, sorry. My name is Samantha Thompson. I'm an energy equity partner on our distributed resource planning team, and I will be facilitating this meeting. So I will be doing my best to monitor the chat and looking for questions if folks have them and calling on you. Today we have a pretty big agenda. We do have a break, as you see. So in the 3 hours, there is a 10-minute break. Woohoo. So if you need to get a snack or walk away or take care of something. But right now we're in the welcoming. And then next we're going to go to the resource planning context. And then we're going to discuss our evolving market. And then from 9:40 to 11:30, we'll have some rich content to discuss our transportation electrification portfolio revision. And there was a 10-minute break built into there. And then we will end, close to the end with 20 minutes for Q&A or discussion. But again, feel free to raise your hand or ask questions in the chat throughout the presentation. And then we will close and talk about our next steps. So that is what's on the docket or the agenda today. And I will pass it over to the resource planning senior manager, Jason Salami-Klotz.
Hi. For some reason, my video is not working. It says something about them. It says, can't start because your host has stopped it. Oh, okay. Start my video. There we go. Hello. Hi, everyone. So I help manage our planning group, where we have, if we go to the next slide, a series of responsibilities. So this team was the team that issued the integrated resource plan and clean energy plan. It is also the team that issued our distribution system plan. And we will be working with this team here, the transportation electrification team, on issuing the transportation electrification plan for this June 1st. And we'll be issuing the multi-year plan as well. The reason the company decided to consolidate planning, I think, is a good idea. It's just part of best practice to make sure that the information and data that is used for every one of these plans is generated by the same individuals, that there is a source of truth around the data that's used, the outputs, the inputs, and that there's clear guidance from the planning team on how to conduct these activities that are spoken of, proposed, demonstrated, shown in any one of these plans. So the integrated resource plan, for those who may not know, is a practice that goes back several decades. It used to be called the long-term planning is what, and Oregon actually was the first state in the country to develop long-term planning. It soon became the integrated resource plan through the development of some guidelines. And the integrated resource plan has typically been one of the two major filings that a utility submits to the commission. The other is the general rate case. So in the general rate case, you can look through, if you so choose, all of our expenses and expenditures, our revenues are there for the public viewing in our general rate case. And actually, we are in the midst of a general rate case before the commission. So if you wanted to, you could look up that case and read through all of what PGE has been spending money on and is expected to make money from. And then our clean energy plan outlines how we're going to meet our greenhouse gas goals as defined by HB 2021, along with other goals around resource development down into the distribution system and meeting community expectations around the development of those resources. The distribution system plan is, again, relatively new. It's something that the commission is still solidifying and moving through. That gives us insight and stakeholders insight into the activities and investments we plan to make and or do on our distribution system. So those two plans look out long-term to identify investments the company plans to make, whether they happen to be like through the integrated resource plan, large investments like wind farms, solar farms, large batteries. And then your distribution system plan similarly shows what investments we'll make down on the distribution system to meet load. Neither one of these plans is the ultimate end of any investment decision. They simply forecast and demonstrate what the utility plans to do, and there's still steps before the utility makes investment. And the transportation electrification plan is where the utility shows or demonstrates to the public investments that we plan to make in order to support transportation electrification and both our customers and the state's policy goals. And similarly, for the multi-year plan, that has traditionally been a place where we have shown the investments that we plan to make for demand response. The multi-year plan is probably the smallest budget-wise of all these activities. So consolidating these efforts into one team helps us consolidate our activities, our insights, and helps us get to a better source of truth. Any questions on this slide?
I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised, so
Okay.
like maybe not yet, but you can continue.
It's either because they're Oregonians or it's morning, one of the two. Okay. Next slide, please. So just wanted to point out sort of what is affecting and some of the timeline associated with transportation electrification. Back in, I think it was 2015, 2016, the legislature passed SB 1547, which charged the utilities with conducting programs to support and accelerate transportation electrification and to harvest and bring about the benefits of that work. Sorry, I'm trying to read a question. I'll get to that in a minute. And then in 2021, the legislature passed HB 2165, which creates a monthly meter charge customers' bills that allows us to collect some dollars for these programmatic efforts. We, in response to SB 1547 in 2016, we issued our first transportation electrification plan in 2019, where we outlined a series of activities that we would undertake in order to accelerate the adoption of transportation electrification. A major area of activity there was identifying how to fertilize the market with the charging infrastructure necessary to support adoption. And then in 2022, which was informed by HB 2165, we started a series of stakeholder meetings and workshops. You can see there were 5 here to discuss our intentions to issue a TE plan in late 2022. That came after some work with the commission around new Division 87 administrative rules. So there were some rules in place, administrative rules the commission issued back in, I want to say 17 or 18, that outlined what should be in a transportation electrification plan. The commission subsequently in 21, I think it was 21, 22, issued new rules. Eric is here. He can tell you all about what's in those rules and why they undertook the changes. But those new rules outline in some detail what's supposed to be in our transportation electrification filing, the cadence of those filings, reporting requirements. So those rules are what we'll be responding to and trying to comply with in the submittal of our 2023 plan. And then today we're going to walk you through some of the changes that we have made to the 2022 drafts that you had seen. Mostly, and the biggest change in all this is a pivot. One of the reasons we decided to delay the submittal of the 2022 plan into 2023 was around our concerns over ratepayer impact and what we were seeing in the market. So in 2021 and 2022, the market started to accelerate. And as you all know, the Biden administration has also been budgeting a great deal of money for a transportation electrification pivot. That is affecting the market, and it's moved the market fairly quickly. This transportation electrification plan that we'll show you here, outlined here, is a response to that. It is also a response to the fact that in February of 23, we had anticipated submitting a GRC, a general rate case, which we did, that outlines costs and revenues. And then additionally, we had anticipated in March of 23 to submit our integrated resource plan as a response to HB 2021, which also held our clean energy plan. So knowing that these two items were coming up in 2023, PGE decided to delay the transportation electrification plan feeling that it was too early to submit the transportation electrification plan ahead of our GRC and ahead of our IRP and CEP. We felt it was necessary to have those items out in front of the public before we had our transportation electrification plan, because those couple of items they're large and they carry a great deal of gravity. And what we didn't want to do is get out ahead of those, nor did we want to take transportation electrification plan spending out of context. So those two items, the GRC and the IRP CEP, are informing the pivot that we've taken with this transportation electrification plan, which has many of the same activities that you'd seen in 2022 in those stakeholder workshops, those 5 stakeholder workshops. But what we've done is talked about reducing the amount of incremental spending that we're asking from ratepayers, and pivoting the activity towards more sustainable, long-term, traditional utility practices through rates and tariffs. So a consistent theme you'll see throughout this presentation is that the transportation electrification plan and the transportation electrification team understands that the market is becoming more sustainable. There's a lot more there for customers. There's a lot more charging companies. There's a lot more cars to be acquired or available. There's a used market. And so we're going to concentrate more on how we can support this activity, learning about how to support that activity to inform long-term sustainable approaches. So I'll pass it along now. If there are any questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised. I do want to shout out the transportations or plug their email. I'll put it in the chat, but it is tep@pgn.com. So if you have questions or comments or want to provide feedback at a different time, you're more than welcome to email us at tep@pgn.com. Right. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome. I will stay online if anybody has any questions.
Great. I'll pass it to Alicia.
Yeah, hello, everybody. I'm Alicia Lawrence, the Senior Manager of Transportation Electrification here at PGE. So Jason did a great job of sharing how we are involving transportation electrification into the company's overall planning strategies. And he also started talking through what are we seeing as PGE's role in an evolving market. So I wanted to share additional detail beyond the other planning efforts of what we saw and what you can expect to see from us, which Jason had alluded to. So we can go to the next slide. What I wanted to be able to share is the data that we're seeing. So let me orient to this slide so you can say what's changed since the last time we've chatted. And I want to be able to show kind of overall what we've seen since the last time we filed our TE plan back in 2018. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see the number of electric vehicles on the road is the label. And it's really the number of electrical vehicles on the road that are in PGE's service area. So that's what we're really looking at. So you can see, what do we expect to see? What is our forecast of the number of EVs?
Uh-oh. Did we lose Alicia?
My apologies. I don't know what happened. Can everyone still hear me?
We lost you for maybe, I don't know, like 45 seconds or so. So
Yeah.
Okay.
you could go back a little bit. That'd be great.
I can. All right. So sorry, I'm not seeing the shared screen.
Okay. Let me share the screen.
Okay, thank you. My apologies, everyone.
Okay, it would not be a virtual meeting without technical difficulties. I feel like since the pandemic, we are all prepared for these moments. We give each other a lot of grace. It's a really great tool, but sometimes it fails us. And We just have to get back at it. So we appreciate everyone's patience.
Thank you, Sam. I agree. All right. Well, folks, here we go. So let me just, I want to make sure that you're able to hear the description of the EVs on the road, and that's referring to the number of electric vehicles we forecast seeing in a PGE's service area. So you can kind of see that on the left-hand side on the bottom, the years. So really, when you look at this, that gray line is saying, here's the number of electric vehicles we were forecasting to serve 3 years ago when we created our transportation electrification plan. We were looking at that acceleration. You can see that last year when we were creating our 2022 plan, we could see that there was an increase. Like we're starting to see that there's that EV adoption, electric vehicle adoption is increasing, that we should increasing faster, which is great. And so then we could see, okay, we're anticipating a faster growth trajectory, knowing that there's different policy changes that had happened to move forward on that. When all the different things came in with the IRA adoption, the Inflation Reduction Act that got signed into effect in last August, and then as we looked at different policy changes, we realized we needed to pause and really think through both looking at what is the overall impact of all of our different planning efforts, as well as what are these policy changes and additional dollars that are going in with the IIJA CHIPS Act and the IRA dollars. What impact should we be forecasting? What impact are we seeing that we need to be able to think through? Is our strategy still the same strategy, or do we need to shift it? And so you can see with that turquoise line, that blue line, what our current forecast is. You can see that we could see, okay, the dollars are shifting consumers' behaviors. I see it just like I'm a football and NFL fan. So I was watching football and the Super Bowl, and you can see the amount of commercials, right, that are on the TV that are for EVs. And then you see it on the roads when you're starting to see that. So we can see the impacts of our different policies and the dollars that are available in the market. And so you can see that you can see we forecast that the number of EV adoption is that momentum is gaining. And that's led us to shift from the need to accelerate to making sure that we're supporting this market, that we can plan for this market, support this market, and make sure that we're supplying the electricity that's needed for our customers to be able to drive and support their lifestyles. Any questions on this slide?
I do not see any questions in the chat or in the queue at this moment. So
All right.
okay to proceed, but again, if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat or raise your hand.
So really wanted to share, what is PGE's transportation electrification strategy? What does this look like? So Jason had chatted through this, that we really see that as we move to supporting the market, is that we're looking at that long-term evolution where we've had a lot of different programs and programs-based approaches, and we want to shift to what is part of just the core of how a utility works, which is traditional rates and tariffs. And so on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see what are those different activities that we see, that so we can plan for the load, serve the load, and manage the load. So we say planning, so we need to make sure, let's update our forecasting capabilities so we can have that additional insight from all the different customer interests that we're seeing. We see our need that we will provide that utility infrastructure, that we're going to have what we call make ready. And what that is just all the underlying infrastructure that leads up to connecting electricity to the charger, and that we can make sure that that's ready and available for our customers. That also means that we need to make sure that we're coordinating where does this load go? Where should it go for some really larger loads? So when you think about medium and heavy duty vehicles, so the Sprinter vans, semis, garbage trucks, we want to make sure we know where there's going to be a grouping of those different fleets so that we can make sure we're helping to aim them towards areas where there's load available, and also be planning for that for the future as well. Lastly, so when this load comes on, we also want to make sure that we're managing it. So how do we have both smart and managed charging, that we've got the right time of use rates and time of day rates to support making sure that we're managing that load, and that when it comes on and when it's convenient to charge. And so we're looking at can we operate our transportation electrification moments of charging as a portfolio, and to help support what we call the virtual power plan, which is to make sure we're partnering with customers on when can they charge, which would be convenient for them, and also work with our grid needs. Lastly, then as you heard, we want to make sure, how do we structure those TE rates and tariffs to help manage that load so that it incents that charging behavior that supports grid health, making sure we know where the load needs to be going and helping to build it out, and then also meets our policy mandates. So on the right-hand side, you can see what are the current activities we're doing. So we're working on federal grants. So there's grant coordination with communities, ODOT and ODOE. We are, as usual, on working on the grid. We've got forecasting efforts that are continuing on and planning. We're modernizing our grid, changing how we, making sure that we're building out our grid in a way that's going to support that future charging and looking at what are the different rate and tariff designs. For equitable access to charging, that is an activity we're doing. We're making sure we're serving those unique loads and market needs via grants, as well as our own grid investment to help support our business segment. Really looking at, we've been focusing on the make ready, as well as focusing on developing load management tools. And then for our residential market, what we're looking at is make sure we're helping with the load management and that we're supporting their needs to move over to transportation electrification. Any questions on anything in this slide? I want to make sure I can use a lot of utility speak, so I just want to make sure if there's questions I can help clarify any of these terms that might be new to people.
Does everyone on the, oh, sorry, was someone
No,
speaking?
it's okay. We had an issue. We got a typo here on the VPP section. It says virtual power plant. It should be plant.
As I thought it was plant, but okay. Thank you, Kai.
Just checking in with folks, just like Alicia was stating, there's a lot of technical terms and jargon. We try our best not to use it, but does everyone understand what load means? Just how we use that in the utility space? Or you don't have to answer, but I know sometimes that comes up, but I think we don't have any questions really.
There, just load is the electricity that our customers use. And at one specific time, you got to make sure that we have enough electricity to meet their needs in that moment when they need it. And that's what they use at that one specific moment in time.
Great, thank you. Well, we don't have any questions in the chat currently or any hands raised, so we can move forward.
All right. So to sum up our what we're looking for our proposed portfolio into kind of three areas. We're looking at what are those infrastructure needs? What is the managed charging needs? And then how can those flow into future rates and tariffs? And so what you'll see for the infrastructure side is that we're going to have make ready programs. And that's that underlying infrastructure underneath the charger. So we've got multifamily. For multifamily, there's also going to be a rebate for those underserved communities. There's a business, workplace, and public charging make ready program that will have a partial rebate for chargers. There's the heavy duty charging program, which we've already had in place and are continuing on. And then our fleet pilot that we've had in place as well and will be continuing on. We've also had in the 2022 monthly meter charge budget, the municipal charging collaboration, which is our goal in supporting equitable charging. What that looks like is it's pull charging, and you'll get to hear more about that, but that's our way of also investing in the infrastructure to make sure that we've got equitable charging across our service area for underserved communities. And that will also have portfolio enablement, make sure that we're doing the work to partner with others to optimize those federal grant dollars, making sure we got the modeling in place, learning from those make ready programs so we can have the right modeling, and using a budget data analyst to make sure that we are using the right work and the right different funding structures in the right place. For managed charging, you'll see a continuation of our residential smart charging pilot, along with the work on developing a fleet partner managed charging. And all of these things, the infrastructure managed charging, make sure that we're flowing to what is the right future rate and tariffs. And so make sure we're modeling to say, what should these look like? What are the different, what we could think of as load profiles, like how different customer segments, how multifamily might use electricity, that might be different than how a fleet uses electricity. And that we can, how do we have those make ready programs lead to LEA and rate and tariff designs. And then we also use our clean fuels emerging technology to try out new technologies, which can also lead to rate designs as we look to how do we scale from technology ideas to what could this look like to support the managed charging future for our customers. So we'll be diving into each of these portfolios after my portion. Just want to give you a preview of what does this look like in whole.
Looks like we have a comment in the chat, Alicia.
All right.
Let me read it. Would it be helpful if PG would discuss here how its plan and tasks interact with the planning and tasks of other participants in the EV charging field? Example, state, city, private sector, etc. You may be covering this later in the presentation. So
Thank you. Let me tackle it here and make sure that we can at least cover it here. I don't think we'll be going in depth later on. And so what we are looking at doing, what we currently do, so we are working with the private market to understand different companies' needs who we know are going to be having larger electrification needs. So we are in talks and conversations with them so we can understand where are they looking and how much growth that could mean. We're also in conversations with the West Coast Clean Transit Corridor teams to make sure we understand what does that charging look like and what are the needs all the way up the I-5 corridor. And then I know that we've had connections and conversations with trying to, I don't want to misstate it, but I know that we've got personnel involved with it. I can't remember if it's ODOT or DEQ, but we do have different conversations that we're making sure that we can be thoughtful and be aware of what are other parties doing so that we're being smart and planful with where we develop our charging infrastructure.
thank you, Alicia. Duncan, hopefully that answers your question.
Hi, yeah, this is Angus Duncan.
Oh,
And
Angus, sorry.
yeah, it's okay. Yes and no. To the extent that PGE is hearing from other parties what the demands on the T&D grid will be, that's a good first step and obviously essential for all of the folks out there who are going to be emplacing charging equipment. And it's obviously essential for PGE to know where those loads are going. The other part of the question has to do with PGE's own strategy for deploying, utility-supported, utility-owned, charging equipment across its service territory. I know that PGE has the authority to do that, and that's a part of the overall portfolio. But the question that keeps coming up in my conversations with ODOT, with PCEF, with a bunch of other folks is there an overall map that shows what kind of charging infrastructure is going in where to serve what needs? Is there alignment on the technologies so that you can pull into a charging station like you'd pull into a gas station and not be frustrated because you got the wrong interconnection equipment? Does the charging equipment that charges, do they all take credit cards? Some really basic things like that at least so far I have trouble discovering in conversations with folks that are in this space.
Okay. I think, Angus, that's helpful. I think we've got, we'll get into more of like, where are we locating our chargers within the municipal program? We'll get into that a little bit more later of how are we selecting that. And I think thinking through the mapping exercise, I think we could get into some of those details. We hadn't planned to go down to that level of detail, but we can talk through some of that as well. And then regarding our standards and different things, that we are looking at the same standards as we had discussed in 2022. So making sure that they're ADA accessible, as well as making sure that our payment standards can work for, I'm trying to remember, but I'll have our experts speak more closely to that, but making sure that we're meeting, I think it's the Washington standards, but I'll confirm that and make sure we get back to you.
Okay, and the distinction I would draw is between what's possible and what's easy. Because if it's possible but not easy, people are not going to deal with it. So that when you get to that, thanks.
Thanks, Angus. Any other questions that are out there? Thanks, Angus.
I don't see any questions currently in the chat or comments. So you're good. So proceed.
All right. I think I just have maybe one more slide, just talk through some things that you'll see in the future slides. So within transportation electrification, there's different funding mechanisms that are at play, and you'll see these terms on the different portfolios so you can understand how each program is being funded. And so our programs and infrastructure have multiple things. So we've got on the left-hand side, you'll see capital expenditures. We refer to that as CapEx. It is rate-based funds to help build infrastructure or purchase assets. On the next line down on the slides, you'll see that there's deferral or operating expenditures or OpEx. And those are rate-based funds that are for operations and maintenance of programs or infrastructure. The next line that you'll see in parentheses MMC, that stands for what we refer to as the monthly meter charge. That's the House Bill 2165 law that Jason referred to earlier. There's a mandated fee included in customer rates to support transportation electrification, which is 0.5% of revenue, and that 50% of those funds need to go to our underserved community. And then lastly, you'll see a line that's called CFP, which stands for the Clean Fuels Program, which is funds from a DEQ program that PG administers for our residential customers. This is not included in customer rates, and wanted to make sure that that was clarified. So you'll see these. We also in our appendix have a list of our different terms that you can look up later as well, but wanted to make sure I could cover this in case there are questions. As you start hearing from each program manager, you'll see on the left-hand side of their slides how the different funding sources are going into these, are going into the different programs that you'll see. All right.
Hi, sorry, this is Noah Garcia with EVgo. I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you clarify whether the funding from the MMC and CFP are conditional or restricted in any way, or is that purely discretional funding for PGE to invest in a portfolio of TE programs?
I think that's a great question, Noah. So the MMC dollars do have restrictions on them. So we'll collect those dollars, and that 50% of those funds go towards programs and areas for serving our underserved communities. And underserved communities has a really specific definition in House Bill 2165, and I can go into that for you if you'd like, but it has, oh goodness, there's like 8 different factors. So it looks at rural, it looks at low income, it looks at BIPOC communities, it looks at multifamily, so places where it's hard to have access to charging on their own, rural. There's a couple that don't apply to us, which is coastal and frontier. And then I know I'm missing one. But so there's a factor where we have to make sure that 50% of those funds targets those areas that we're really helping to support the equity and charging. For the Clean Fuels Program, our team's done a great job of working with stakeholders to come to an agreement for how those different funds will be spent. And there's different categories of spend with the percentage of the funds that are received from the DEQ going towards those different categories. That's the next section up, so you'll get to hear more from Eva, and that those funds have to go towards residential customers to support residential customers. So there are some restrictions, so to say, or more so guidelines on how we should be spending those monies.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought I saw one more question out there, or was that?
There's no other questions in the chat, or I don't see any hands raised. So I think we're good to move on to our next presenter.
All right. Well, Noah, thank you for your question. It leads so well into Eva DeCicero, who's going to be speaking on the Clean Fuels Program.
All right. Hey, everyone. Like Alicia said, my name is Eva DeCicero, and I'm part of our transportation electrification team. And I especially focus on our programs that are funded by the Oregon Clean Fuels Programs. If we go to the next slide, please. So for those of you who are not familiar, the Oregon Clean Fuels Program, often shortened to CFP, is statewide program that is managed by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. It aims to reduce the carbon intensity and emissions of transportation fuels specifically. And how it does that is by setting a target every single year. And so fuels that are above that target generate deficits, and then fuels that are below that are able to generate credits. And then those who have a deficit are required to either reduce the carbon emissions of their fuel or to purchase credits. So on behalf of our residential customers, PGE participates in the Oregon Clean Fuels Program, and we use those credits, and specifically the revenue from those credits, to fund transportation electrification programs that benefit our residential customers, particularly underserved, and there's a few other requirements as well. But if we go on to the next slide, today we're talking a little bit, and many of you are familiar and have been for many years in the clean fuel space. And so what's changed over the past year is a little bit of how we can use those funds specifically across the TE portfolio. However, even with that change, we wanted to make sure that we were able to continue successful programming to date. Things like our grant programming, the Drive Change Fund, the Electric School Bus Fund, as well as those categories of education and outreach and supporting emerging technology research. So we're planning to continue that, but as so far, the Clean Fuels Program has continued to grow, expand, and revenue has increased year over year. We're also able to now, with some of the rule changes that were alluded to earlier, able to use the clean fuel funds across the TE portfolio. We still are required to use those funds in support of our residential customers, all of that. However, we can use them to support our TE portfolio in ways that will help to bring down a little bit of the cost across all of our programming. So in where we've shifted and prioritized that, it's about, of the total clean fuels portfolio of that, it's about 10%. And that would be particularly focused on supporting our municipal and multifamily programming. So that's the initial area of kind of that distinction that you'll see. And again, we in previous conversations, we had been discussing where that would be used. I just want to make sure that's clear to folks. And the other piece, because we still need to report on this every year and decide these funds, and the other thing that is kind of unique or special about these funds is we are, of course, including them in the TE plan as required. However, the program years 2024 and 2025, we do not actually have yet. So they are based on that forecast. They are based on our current knowledge of market prices, but they also are subject to those market prices and potential market fluctuations. So the actual amount that we have, both to support the clean fuels funded programs, as well as using that amount across the portfolio, the actual amount will vary from the forecast. Again, we refine that forecast every single year and make sure it's as close as possible. However, it's a forecast. And so I just want to make sure that's clear to folks that actual dollars will vary from the exact amount that we have forecasted. There's not, again, folks, especially on our grant programs, education outreach, those have been around for this is our 5th year of the Drive Change Fund, believe it or not. So again, keeping that going, we want to make sure we continue to support community electric transportation programs, continuing to support our school districts as they electrify, and keeping that going. I'm wondering, I don't see any questions in the chat, but happy to answer any questions that are there.
Yeah, so we can open it up now if folks have questions. They may just be thinking it's okay to have the silence. So again, like we said, we have an agenda, but if something pops up at a later time and you have a question like, can I ask this? Drop it in the chat or use the raise hand feature. But Maybe everyone just understands what you're saying, Eva. So there's no, it's pretty straightforward. So
Great. Everything about the Clean Fuels program is easy. So no, I think that one thing I'd really love for folks to take away is that the Oregon Clean Fuels program, and specifically PGE utility participation in that, has really allowed. So you'll see there, right on the left-hand side, we've got Portland Public Schools, one of their first electric school buses. They've participated several years now in electric school bus fund. That's a great cooperation. We've also worked with Pacific Core. Pacific Core actually funded the charging component because their bus depot is in PAC territory, but the buses, of course, serve all of our community, including PGE community. So it's been a great combination, working really closely too with DEQ on their various funding sources as well, going back to Angus's question on coordination, and working kind of across service area and other kind of jurisdictions, as it were. The picture in the middle that was our first pole chargers that were funded through some clean fuel dollars. And that's where that emerging technology component comes in. We use a lot of the learnings that we get in those initial emerging tech programs and incorporate them into our larger programs as we start to expand into maybe a fuller pilot, as it were, and to test out specific technologies there that show promise, but aren't quite ready for perhaps prime time or a full program yet. We want to test that out. And then the last picture there is, again, of a Drive Change Fund recipient, and an electric tractor has been funded through this. Caroline, I see your hands up.
Hi, good morning. I just have a clarification question about and I'm assuming they're administrative rule changes. So following those changes, can you just clarify, 10% more funds can be used specific? Yeah, okay, I'm on the wrong track. So
No, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. So previously there were 6 program principles that were required for deployment of utility IOU Clean Fuels Fund. And one of those program principles was that all Clean Fuels funded programs had to be separate from ratepayer funded programs. So if you think back to, and some of you were in those conversations in 2018 around how the utility should administer these funds, the idea there was we didn't know if there was going to be value in the Clean Fuels program. And I don't know if someone's from CUB is on here too, right? So the distinction there was, I think that what we didn't want to happen was to say, hey, we're going to use clean fuel dollars to fund the grant program. And when those funds didn't materialize from the clean fuels, that we would then go to ratepayers and say, hey, we still want to administer a grant program. So actually we need ratepayer funds to do this. In the Division 87 revisions, part of that looked at this and removed that factor because what we have seen to date is the clean fuels has been generating a fair amount of revenue. And so we can actually now use the clean fuels revenue to support programs that would otherwise be funded by ratepayers. So there's not a particular target or requirement. What we did is we looked at the percentage agreements. So over the years, to both provide program administrative clarity in year to year for reducing administrative costs, we came to agreement that the vast majority of clean fuel dollars would go to the grants and infrastructure category. So that's this Drive Change. And, we use some clean fuel dollars to update charging infrastructure that was out of date and not working. And so what we did was we used that same percentage there in that 10% that was previously going to infrastructure. And now we're just applying it to the TE portfolio. So there is not an explicit number that we have to meet, but we want to honor the work that we did with stakeholders of kind of agreeing to those program percentages where the vast majority of dollars is still going to grants and infrastructure.
Carolyn, does that answer your question? Any additional follow-up?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Okay, Eva, we have just a couple of minutes here before we've got to switch over. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So thank you, Eva, for doing that conversation on the Clean Fuels program. Next, what you'll be seeing is you'll be getting to hear from the different program managers about kind of so you can see the holistic portfolio view. So in residential, you'll get to hear from Cal Conrad. In the municipal charging collaboration, you'll get to hear from Anik Srethra, and then for multifamily charging business public from Darren Spencer. And then lastly, Stephanie Ryder regarding fleet. As Sam had mentioned earlier, we will have a 10-minute break in between some of these programs just based on time and where we're at. But just want to make sure. And I see a question from DG 95738.
Howdy. Yeah, this DG is Dexter Gauntlet, Panasonic. Thanks, great stuff so far. I'm going to put some comments in here just to have it written down. But during this next section, it would be great if we could hear, to the extent that the PGE team is ready to or capable of doing, speaking to the role of standards in these programs. There's been a lot of activity on that front, really great progress from the federal government in terms of open standards. If you have either anecdotes or details with regards to standards for these 4 programs as you present, that'd be really helpful for everyone, I think.
Okay. I think, Dexter, we hadn't prepared to the level of standards. We wanted to keep it more high level of the programs, and that we can definitely follow up if the conversations we get to and the level of detail we provide doesn't meet what you were hoping to hear from. Please let us know, and we can follow up on that.
Yeah, and where that comment's come out, so therefore I'll just put the comment in the chat just for the good of the order. But understood. And my comment's coming from the perspective where PGE has actually done a really good job with the standards, and it would really strengthen the TE plan to highlight that great vision that PGE has for that.
Thanks, Dexter. And yet that will be seen in the transportation electrification plan, and we can reference where we've referenced our standards in the filings that we've had to date as well. Thank you. All right. And on that note, here we go. We'll go through the program overview. In each section by program, you're going to see what is the overview of the program, what is the description of what you can anticipate. We also wanted to be able to provide what does the proposed customer journey look like. In some sections, it might be for the customer who's using it, but also the customers that we are partnering with to bring a program. And then also, what is that long-term program strategy? Where is this headed, and how do we want to use what we're learning in different pilots to move towards that long-term strategy you heard above for our rates and tariffs, and also our managed charging. So on that note, Cal Conrad, come on in. Can't wait to hear more about residential.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. So I'm Cal Conrad, and I am on the transportation electrification team focused on our residential EV drivers and in the residential EV smart charge pilot. So a brief overview of the pilot itself. The residential EV smart charge program launched in October of 2020 with the 5,000 customer cap through the end of 2024. This is a program for customers who live in single family residences. Currently, we offer $500 rebates towards the purchase and installation of a qualified level 2 charger. And we also have a vehicle telematics option for Tesla drivers with a non-qualified charger. Once these customers are enrolled in the program, they then participate in the Smart Charge program, where we call data.
I'm sorry, folks, we're having a connectivity issue here again. We'll give it just a second.
I'm sorry, folks. Okay, it sounds like everyone dropped.
Yes, let's give folks just a second, Cal. I can hear
Okay.
you. And
Okay.
see.
No worries.
It seems like there's an outage in Northwest Portland area. So I think many factors are happening around the city.
Okay, Cal, let's go ahead and keep trucking. We are recording this, so in the event that anybody misses something, we will provide this and they'll be able to review. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just backtrack just a hair in case I dropped before I was saying this. So once customers are enrolled in the Smart Charge program, we call daily demand response events by stopping the charge of the car at set times and then resuming the charge at the end of that event. So trying to avoid some high peak times for the charging. And in return for participating, these customers receive seasonal rewards. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Right now, we currently have almost 3,000 customers that are in the program through our two options. One is the charger, the qualified charger option, and the other is the vehicle telematics channel. But if you look on the right-hand side of this screen, like I said, currently we offer $500 rebates. We're looking to lower that to $300. And as Alicia said earlier, we're looking to shift from accelerating the market to now supporting the market. The $300, it's about 45% of the incremental cost of a non-connected level 2 charger. And we believe that will still help with some of the financial barriers that customers experience, but lowering that rebate amount, we're still helping folks adopt at-home chargers as well. So also looking to continue that $1,000 income eligible rebate, keeping it at that same amount. As well as the $50 rebate for test the drivers with non-qualified chargers. What we're looking to change right now, as I said earlier, we're looking to extend the pilot. Right now, it's scheduled to end at the end of 2024. We're looking to extend the pilot to the end of 2025, and then to expand that cap that we currently have. As I said earlier, we have a 5,000 customer cap that's currently on there. With the rate that we're going, we would hit that prior to the end of 2024. So we want to be able to extend the pilot an additional year to take the learnings from the current pilot. And it also allows time to learn from the testbed EV charging study around some managed charging, all while looking to decrease that rebate amount from $500 to $300. The seasonal incentive, we currently have it at $25 for every 6 months. So if a customer meets the 3 participation requirements, which is participating in at least 3 demand response events, charging your car at home at least 13 times, and keeping your charger connected to the internet at least 50% of the time. In previous seasons, we have
Hi, folks. It looks like we're having another technical hiccup. So we'll give Cal just a second to reconnect. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, everyone. I am back now. I'm not sure if everyone's being dropped or if it's just me. I apologize if it's me.
Okay, I'm seeing the screen come back up.
Okay. I do see a question here. It says, given the need to accelerate the national fleet turnover from ICE to EV, might PGE be a little premature in shifting over from incenting the market to supporting the market? Implicit comment says, I think it's way premature. Thank you for that feedback. we are still looking to incent just lowering that rebate amount. Given the amount of participation that we've been receiving, we do think that it is we're still getting people to enter into the program, and I think a $300 rebate can still help incentivize while still supporting as well. But I appreciate the feedback there. I see another comment here. It says, can you speak more to the income eligibility and qualification process for the $1,000 rebate? Yes, so we have an income eligibility, and it's for low to moderate income customers. So it's up to 120% of the state median income. And if you are below that amount, as long as you provide W-2 and some other financial information, we can qualify you for that $1,000 rebate towards the purchase and installation of your level 2 charger. Thank you for the questions. So down at the target market on this, this does target residential EV drivers that reside in single family homes. They don't need to own the home. It can be for renters as well. And the funding, the 2022 monthly meter charge, it funds the panel upgrade rebate that we have in place. That, real briefly, that is a rebate towards any customers that find out that they have to upgrade their panel in order to install the level 2 charger. If they do, then they could qualify for this rebate as well. It offers up to $1,000 towards panel upgrade costs. And if their customers are income eligible, it could be up to $5,000 towards those costs. So we're really trying to help with any financial barriers, and especially unexpected financial barriers for customers that may live in a home that doesn't have that capacity, or doesn't, an older home that they just weren't expecting to have those additional costs. We're also developing a trade ally network, and we do have something in place where customers can actually go to our website and find someone to help with the installation quotes and process. So those are two of the funds that are coming from the 2022 MMC. Lastly, on the left side there, shifting dollars to spend from the monthly meter charge from the deferral for the extension of the pilot. And the purpose of that is to support the grid through managed charging, gather the learnings from the demonstration that we have and from this pilot, and to best understand how to support the grid through managed charging and grid resiliency. When we launched this, the monthly meter charge was not around when the pilot started. And we feel like this is a smart way to spend these dollars with the intention that was originally set.
Thanks, Cal. Hey, I do see a question from Angus here in the chat, so let me restate for everyone. Has PGE considered a PGE customer service that offers to finance and install home charging, recovering the cost net of incentive from a bill surcharge, perhaps using the Energy Trust as the installation service entity?
We are in development of something that's going to help with customers through the whole entire process and the ability to actually finance some things. But yeah, I appreciate that comment. It's something that we can definitely look into a little bit more, especially with the bill surcharge. I haven't specifically looked into that, but that's something that that I can take away.
Just real quick, I just wanted to chime in, Cal. This is Andy Iden. Angus, we have looked at on-bill finance for a variety of other projects or program types. So I think that's something that we'll certainly keep looking at, and appreciate the comment on that one.
We can go to the next slide. Okay, so here is the journey that we're looking to. Well, we have a lot of this in place already. We're looking to also develop it as well. So if a customer that's either a residential EV driver or someone that's really intending to purchase or lease an EV and they want to be able to charge at home, we want them to know that they want to install a level 2 charger, and they learn of the pilot through targeted marketing or word of mouth, or they go to our website directly to find this information. And once they find what chargers qualify for the program itself, which is clearly listed on our website and through this marketing channel, or if they have a Tesla and they know that they want to be able to participate in what we call EV Pulse, that is the customer facing app for them. And they determine, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to purchase my this charger, and then I want to get an installation quote through the Trade Ally network that we have currently. So customers will go through the process, and they get their charger installed. And at that point, they go back to our website and they apply for the pilot. That's what we currently have, and customers can just fill out a lot of the information of their current situation, and then they provide some invoices and some other information to get accepted onto the pilot. Once they're enrolled, they would then receive their charger rebate, which we're proposing to be at $300 within 4 to 6 weeks. From there, they're on the program we call daily events for these customers. By the way, customers can always opt out of any events that are scheduled. If they need to charge at a certain time, they can opt out of that certain event, and they can get the charge they need. But once they finish a season and they met all the participation requirements that I described earlier, they can receive then that $25 on-bill credit at the end of the 6-month season. Our seasons run from October to March, and then from April to September, kind of a winter summer season that we have. Any questions on the customer journey? Okay, we can go to the next slide, and this is some of the long-term strategy that we're looking at. So right now in our test bed, we're doing an EV charging study that's just getting underway, and it's really trying to best understand vehicle telematics capability and manage charging possibilities. So we're really looking to manage the effectiveness of telematics managed charging versus the current smart charging program that we have. Managed charging, what we're looking at is not only stopping the charge at certain times and then starting the charge again. It can also look at when is a good time to actually charge the car at a certain time, and then when would it be good to stop that charge at a different time. What makes sense for the customer, but also what makes sense for the grid itself. So we're going to determine what changes from the test bed study need to be made, and then look to scale that to a program in 2026 and beyond. We're also looking to gather that data from the current activity from the test bed and managed charging. We're also exploring what is the impact of time of day on event calling and shifting that charging load. Big piece will be looking to determine, is there an EV specific time of day rate or tariff that's needed as well? And as I kind of explained just earlier, looking to the ability to control the load to reduce the impact overall to the grid, and having a minimal impact on customers' ability to get the charge they need when they need it. So ideally, a customer can kind of plug their car in, and they know the charge that they're going to get when they need that charge. And in the background, we can do things to be able to help the grid as well. So those are things that we'll be exploring. I see a question here. Is there a case in which a residential customer learns of the pilot, pays for the install, applies on PG's website for the rebate, and then does not receive the rebate? We do have other options. So when a charger was added to our qualified products list, they get the $500 rebate if it was installed after that date. If it was installed before that date, we still do have a rebate of it's a bring your own charger rebate, and that's a $50 for the customer, and that's clearly explained on the website itself. But if a customer bought and installed a level 2 charger, had a hardwired installed, and provided all the information, they would be able to qualify for the program itself. If there's anything, maybe there's a little bit of back and forth with our coordinator, if there's something that might be missing, like an invoice or something like that, but those are few and far between, and typically we can work it out with the customer. So we've gotten very few complaints of customers that we're not able to apply, or we're not able to enroll in the program, even though they followed all the guidelines.
Charlie, does that address your question, or did you have a follow-on?
No, I think that addresses it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cal.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions anybody has? Oh, there is another question.
It looks like Carolyn has a question about managed charging. Would it preclude the need for a separate meter for an EV specific rate?
This is that's a great question, and something we're definitely in the test bed. We want to be able to take all these learnings, and as I said, we're right at the very beginning of learning some of these things, and whether a separate meter is needed for an EV specific rate. These are some of the learnings that we're really looking to find. Yeah, I don't quite have an answer for that, but I know we are looking for ways that we can. We don't want to make it cumbersome on the customer to have a separate meter installed. So can't say definitively either way, but we are looking for ways to make it as easy and as effective for customers as well. Thanks, Caroline. I know that wasn't maybe quite a yes or no answer to that question, but I appreciate that. That's something I'm definitely thinking about as I gather these learnings as well. Any other questions?
Cal, let's keep trucking. We've got a couple of minutes here still. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everyone's time and hearing about the residential program. I'm really excited about the possibilities and where this can go. So thank you. If there are further questions, please send it to the email address that's been provided, and I'm happy to follow up at a later time. But in the meantime, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Anik, and he's going to be talking about our municipal collaboration. So thank you all.
Perfect. Thank you, Cal. As Cal mentioned, my name is Anik Shrestha. I'm also on the TE team here at PGE. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide? All right. For those who don't know, the Municipal Charging Collaboration is a approach that allows PGE to collaborate with our municipal partners to help meet the needs of underserved communities who may lack off-street home charging options. The program also helps streamline site host agreements, keep costs low by leveraging existing assets in the right of way, such as utility poles, and helps municipalities reach their climate action goals. Additionally, we're hoping that this program can help inform any potential private partnerships around chargers. Since the last time we met, there's been a few changes. We've refocused the broader ownership of level 2 infrastructure and instead focused on providing infrastructure mainly to underserved communities. With this, we've reduced the number of ports that will be installed under this program, and we've decided to remove DC fast charging ports altogether. Chargers installed under this program will utilize our Schedule 50 rate, which has a 19-cent additional 19-cent kilowatt hour charge during peak time, which is 3 to 8 p.m. on weekdays, and is similar to a time of day rate. Our first phase, or the pilot, I should say, was introduced in our 2022 monthly meter charge budget and proposed 60 level 2 utility pole mounted chargers. This week, we also got our 2023 monthly meter charge budget approved, which allowed for another additional 100 level 2 utility pole mounted chargers being installed. With this 2024 to 25 to the TE plan, we're looking to install an additional 80 ports, most of which will be curbside charging, but with some additional pole charging as well. Total, we're looking at a 240 level 2 ports, which is equivalent to about 12% of the total public level 2 ports that TINA identified as needed by 2025. Any questions here before we move on? Oh, I guess I'll go to the chat. Nothing. All right. So just really quickly, here is our municipal customer journey. So PGE will actually be reaching out to our municipal collaborators and we'll ask them.
Excuse me, this is Phil Barnhart. I don't seem to be able to send you a chat. You indicated that there was a 19-cent additional charge per kilowatt hour. So what would that make the actual total kilowatt hour charge during that time be? I don't have any idea what your other rates are that you would add to this.
Yeah, that is a great question. Let me get back to you on that one. I don't have the right.
I mean, that is a key item. One of the biggest complaints we get about traveling is the high cost of charging compared to cost of charging at home. And so, you know, if this rate is too high, you haven't actually provided anything for people who don't have any other options as compared to just buying gasoline as they've been doing.
Yeah. So currently our Schedule 50 rate has a $3 flat rate, and I think most of our chargers are able to be charged for 4 hours. And then so if customers are using it during peak time, that's when the additional 19 cents per kilowatt hour takes place.
Okay, so you say there's a flat rate, then plus 19 cents per kilowatt hour. Do I understand that right?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so this is our municipal customer journey. So our PGE, our program team, will be reaching out to the municipality about the program. And then we will ask if they are interested in joining. If the municipality is interested in joining, we ask if they could provide some target neighborhoods or areas where they think that charging infrastructure is needed, and that best helps underserved communities. Then we'll conduct our own preliminary assessment of those locations, plus any that we might find from data that we have, and work also at the same time with the municipality to sign an agreement. Once that's in place, we'll share the locations with the municipality, and then help the municipality conduct outreach to ensure that those locations work for the community. And once both PGE and the municipality agree upon final locations, we'll start the build out process and ask that the municipality mark off the parking location with an EV parking only sign and appropriate markers on the road. Once chargers are online, EV drivers are able to use these chargers, and they'll be put onto our website as well as PlugShare and ChargeWay apps, so that drivers are able to find these chargers. And then as the chargers are in service, PGE will maintain these chargers and unless until we figure out a potential private partnership. Sorry. Any questions here before we move forward?
Hi, this is John Garrett with Oregon Cobb. I just have a fairly simple question. When it comes to the regarding the previous slide, if you could go back, well, I guess you don't even need it. Just regarding the rates and the amount of time someone would charge, is someone charged for the total time that they're plugged into the charger, or how long they're actually charging?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
So if someone is parked at an L2 charger, right, and this takes place over several hours because it's a relatively slow charger, they're charged for the amount of time they're at the charger, correct?
Well, it's a flat rate, so they would be charged the same amount.
But if there's a peak usage rate, then 19 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yes, that would be on top of it. Yeah.
So just curious, right? I'm thinking in terms of what's going to motivate people to move their car and unplug it so that someone else can come in and plug in. And yeah, are they being charged for the total time that they're plugged in to the L2 charger, or are they charged just for the time that it's actually charging, right? Because once the car is full of energy, it won't charge anymore.
It's going to be the flat rate plus the additional peak time usage, and then the charger should shut off after the allotted time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just lost. Did everyone else lose everything? Was it just me?
Yeah, we're
this is
coming right
Phil
back.
Barnhart. I think you missed the question that was being asked. If I understand the question correctly, the questioner wanted to know if people would be charged for the time that they continued to be plugged in after the charging had stopped, or if they were only going to be charged for the time that there was actually electricity flowing.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
When the charging is stopped, then no, there's no additional charge. We are looking to explore to see if there would be a surcharge fee if customers are there for longer than the allotted time.
Alicia, can you jump in for just a sec?
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to share. So Anik's referencing to what our current rate is looking at. When we see how Schedule 50 is working and hearing feedback from Electric Avenue customers that also use Schedule 50, we are looking and seeing the need that we may need to relook at how we allocate the charges for our public charging infrastructure. And so I appreciate the feedback. So right now it is a flat rate. We are looking at the viability of moving to a per kWh fee. We have not made that move at that time. We need to evaluate that, but we are hearing from our customers they would appreciate moving to a per kWh fee so that they can understand, so that if they don't need the full 2 hours or 4 hours, wherever they're charging at, that they can actually be charged for what they use. And so please know that's how our rate was currently structured based on feedback back when it was made. And we are looking at what's the right look for Schedule 50 to meet our customer needs in this current environment. And so we don't have any fees that charge for idle time. And those are all things that we would want to look at and assess as to whether that would make sense or be needed.
Great, thank you. Yeah, my focus is primarily on idle time. Again, just trying to, just thinking, if these are meant for many different users, right? Other people will want to use the charger. Yeah, and I can easily see someone, connecting their EV and then going and doing something for 6 to 8 hours, right? And then they're taking up the charger that other people could be using. So maybe some sort of rate incentive, that prevents that would be good.
Okay, thank you for your feedback, John. Yes. We'll be evaluating that. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Phil again. I would note that Tesla already charges a fee if you don't unplug within a reasonable period of time after the charging is finished.
That's who we've looked at, Phil. You're spot on. We've been about looking at what other public entities are doing. I think there's other public charging entities that also charge an idle time fee. And so we've seen Tesla and we've seen how it is effective in helping their drivers move their cars in a good period of time. So looking and thinking through that, and as well as making sure we're balancing the needs for our municipal customers as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, John and Phil. So Anik, let's keep tracking. You've got about 10 minutes left in this section. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So the customer journey for the EV driver is a little bit different. So the EV driver would, once these are installed, would find the neighborhood charger near them, again, via either PG&E's website, PlugShare, or ChargeWay, and they would be able to go and drive to the chargers and park next to them. They can review the instructions on the pole, if it's a pole charger, or the charger itself, if it's a curbside or pedestal charger. And then they can scan the QR code to initiate the session and or whatever payment method is on the charger itself. Once the session is initiated, they can plug their vehicle to start the session. And again, they will be charged our Schedule 50 rate for their session. They can monitor their charging progress through their vendor app, through their vehicle if it allows. And once their session is done, they can unplug their vehicle and to close off the session. Once that's over, they are able to leave the charger and so leave the parking spot as well so that others may utilize the charger. Any questions here?
And we will be providing this deck afterwards, folks, as well as the recording. So if you do have follow-on questions, you can feel free. As you'll note here, the Muni deck is a little, or the Muni section is a little bit unique. So if you have questions coming in for that, please let us know. Okay. Anik, if you're done, I think we can move forward. I want to give room for any questions. Do we have anything from anyone?
Do you want me to comment on the slide at all, Kai? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So using the long-term, what are some of our long-term strategies? This includes looking at our charging data with these chargers to determine appropriate rate design and ensuring that our current rate meets the needs of these chargers, or if they need to be changed or a new one needs to be introduced. We also are hoping to explore flex load opportunities with these types of chargers. Pull chargers are a bit different if you haven't seen one before. And then we will be investigating potential private partnerships for municipal charging and any rate or tariff change associated with that. We hope to develop a long-term approach for charging for underserved communities, especially those without access to off-street parking, and understand how that interplays with multifamily housing residents as well as single-family housing residents and other underserved communities. Lastly, we'd like to identify ways to reduce make-ready and charger installation costs for both pedestal and pole-mounted chargers. And finally, we'd like to improve our customer experience for our end users. And that means improving reliability, dwell time, and making sure that charging etiquette is appropriate. And it looks like we have a question in the chat. Will PGE be committing to the NEVI uptime standards for pole chargers? Yeah, we are looking to follow NEVI standards. I don't believe there's anything specific to pole chargers, but we are looking to follow NEVI standards as closely as possible. Any other questions?
Bill, I see your comment about uptime being absolutely key to success. Yeah, that's something we're paying attention to across the pilots, given the state of the technology. So we're going to go ahead and give folks 10 minutes to step aside. We'll be reconvening at 11:45. If you have any questions tailing on from Anik's presentation or anything earlier, we can give a moment for that before we step on. We'll be having Darren Spencer speak about the multifamily market in just a minute. So we'll see you at a quarter till. Thank you. We're back at the quarter hour. So we had a couple of questions come in from the chat. So we're going to go back and talk to those before we move on to the next section. So Angus, let's start with yours. You had a question about talking with municipalities about reserving parking spaces for pole charging, especially for apartment dwellers without other charging access. Anik, can you speak to that, please?
Yeah. Sorry, my camera is not coming back on. Yeah, we are working with municipalities to reserve parking spots specifically for charging. This is also why we've asked our municipal collaborators to stripe the parking spots and include EV charging only signs so that these are reserved for people charging the vehicles and are not taken up by ICE vehicles. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does answer the question. Thanks very much.
Yep.
This is Phil. The next question is, will municipalities ticket cars that are parked there that are not charging?
That is going to be up to the municipalities themselves. I cannot answer that, but that would be the hope.
Yeah. If there's a sign on the parking space that says EVs only while charging or something like that, it's covered by a state statute that they can ticket them.
Yeah, we can definitely explore that more with municipalities and ensure that they know about that.
Great, that's good input. And Charlie, you had a question about QR codes and whether those will be the only way to initiate a session and what that means for customers that may not have smart devices. Anik?
Yeah, so for our pole charger specifically, right now, the only way is unfortunately QR codes. This has to do with National Electric Code and National Electric Safety Codes, which dictates what and where we can mount things onto our utility poles. We are exploring with the manufacturer a way to put in some sort of credit card reader. But again, it would have to be compliant with those two codes. But with curbside or pedestal charging, we're hoping that the chargers that we choose for this program will have more payment options.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then Carolyn, you had a question too about the uptime formula. There are likely more T excluded factors that are identified in NEVI. For example, vandalism. It's better to identify upfront so the uptime formula is transparent.
I can take a quick stab, and if anyone else on PG wants to chime in as well, they can. Something that's really great about the pole chargers we've selected is they sit up high on our utility poles. And one of the reasons we chose it was actually to get around the vandalism issue. So once the driver scans QR code at the bottom, the charging cord will drop and can be applied to the charger. But in terms of uptime, we have called out 98% uptime in our monthly meter charge budgets specifically for the municipality program. And we hope that we can achieve that. And yeah, we are looking to explore more on NEVI around pole charging and our curbside charging as well.
Carolyn, does that answer your question? I know we may not have every single answer here, but if you would like to dig into that deeper, that's something that we can follow up with you offline. Okay, great. Thanks so much. And Nick, thanks for taking a couple of additional questions. Folks, don't feel like if we've got past a certain topic that you're not able to circle back. and ask on that. We do have content here that we do want to make sure that we get through. But this meeting really is for you to understand and for us to communicate what we're currently thinking leading up to our filing in June. So we're going to switch over to Darren right now, who's going to talk to us about multifamily and commercial make ready.
Thanks, Kai. It's good to be after the break, I think, than before the break. I think I prefer that. So as the name would imply, this program is intended to support expanding EV charging access by providing make-ready infrastructure through engineering, construction, and financial support for multifamily, commercial, and workplace use. In addition to make-ready support, customers are encouraged to install compatible charging through the offer of a rebate off of one of the chargers from PG's commercial qualified products list. And this program is intended to enable PGE to gather insights and data on how best to support.
Shadi, it looks like we dropped screen.
Okay, would you give me the host?
Sure.
Okay.
Do I do that under the help me understand how I go about doing that? Sorry.
Participants list.
Shot, I am seeing the screen now.
We're good.
Thank you.
All right. Where were we? So this program, the whole point of this is for us to gather some insights and data on how best to support the expansion of EV charging in underserved communities like multifamily housing, both through the program design and through effective rate and tariff design. So what's changed from the last time that we spoke? This updated program is more heavily weighted and is designed to be more responsive to the specific need for EV charging in multifamily locations. And specifically, we're targeting multifamily properties located in areas determined to be underserved based on the correct criteria from HB 2165. And as a reminder, that includes properties that are in our multifamily, communities of color, low-income communities, tribal communities, rural communities, frontier communities, coastal communities, and communities impacted by environmental health hazards. One of the things that we're going to try and do is identify, and I know that this is a question that's come up as it relates to locating charging in places like the Pearl District. And one of the things that we're working on is analyzing our own customer data to triangulate on which communities have the kind of greatest or most significant cross-cutting for all these different factors, so that we can make sure that this charging goes to the places which it's intended to in the spirit of what we're trying to do. And so we'll be working and have that, top of mind as far as how we execute on this program. In addition to that, you'll notice that the port amounts have changed pretty significantly. And that's due, in part to the fact that demand for EV charging in these kind of underserved multifamily communities is still really emerging. And so our goal is to understand how best to serve those communities effectively. One of the things that we've heard from some of the customers that we've talked to who live in like these underserved multifamily properties is, we are, more concerned about, that the buses run on time. And so we're kind of mindful of the fact that we need to be really careful and engaging with those communities as far as how and where we install that charging. And so this will allow for us to kind of have that be deliberate in that way. Workplace and commercial has a smaller port distribution, you'll see, but it still will provide us with valuable insights on how to serve those particular loads effectively. You'll see here that there is not a requirement for Schedule 50 for this program, as is the requirement for pole charging. And that's because charging at a multifamily location or workplace location, or for that matter, a commercial location, those are different kind of expectation as far as charging experience. And so this program will more likely follow our Schedule 32 or small commercial rate. And what we'll do is we'll use this program to identify kind of use patterns, dwell times, all those types of things, so that we can kind of more carefully and accurately develop a rate design which is more appropriate for this type of charging. Any questions about any of that?
I don't see any questions in the chat, so if you're good.
Sorry, hi, this is Noah Garcia, EVgo. Can you just clarify whether this program is primarily focused on level 2 charging or is fast charging?
I apologize. Yeah, that's great. A point of clarification. This is level 2 only. So we won't be, this program is not intended for DCFC. So we'll be looking to install level 2 charging at these various locations.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? All right, let's go to the next one. So this process here outlines the journey for customers to participate in this program. And the good news is that this follows a lot of the process that's already been laid down by our fleet partner program. And so they've already been working with customers and have this pretty well dialed in from a construction standpoint and engineering standpoint. What's a little bit different than fleet partner program is we're going to be wanting to partner with community-based organizations, housing bureaus, local nonprofits, folks like that, to identify the right locations to install the charging. I think that what we're particularly mindful of is, like I mentioned before, not putting this in places where people, it's not the right thing for folks. We don't want to have these be stranded assets, but at the same time, we recognize that with it being available, it could be something that they already have tenants who are using their vehicles to drive for Uber or Lyft or some of these types of things, using their vehicles to make money. And so there may already be a population of EV drivers there who've been relying on public charging. And so what we want to do is work to identify those locations with folks who have more insight into this particular market. Obviously, we'll adjust this process as necessary as we go through it. But the goal is to identify those properties that are ready. The PG technical outreach team, for folks that don't know, has already been doing engagement for our business charging rebate as well as fleet partner. And so these are folks who work with customers on energy efficiency and has done this outreach work. And so we'll be working with them to engage with these customers once these sites have been identified. Any questions on this? Oh, one thing I didn't mention. So at the bottom, you'll notice that the customer is responsible for the data transmission, pricing, and all the associated fees, as well as the ongoing maintenance for these chargers. So PGE will not be the ones responsible to maintain these chargers. We'll be monitoring whether or not they're up or not based on the data transmission that we get from them, but we'll be working with customers to ensure that these chargers are up if we're not seeing them up, but it will, because the chargers are customer owned with the help of our incentives, they will be responsible for the ongoing maintenance on that. And we'll certainly be able to be a resource for them as far as those questions are concerned, but ultimately that'll be a responsibility that falls on them. Any questions about that? Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is the last slide for me. So finally, the short-term and long-term strategy for this program. So in the short term, our goal is to gather data to inform rate and tariff design, as well as directional information for the program design, specifically for charging infrastructure in these underserved communities. Obviously, we want to put charging in the areas that need it and otherwise wouldn't have it. We want to identify ways to be more efficient and impactful with the dollars that we're using. We want to deploy chargers that can be integrated into future PGE programs. So those are chargers that are identified by us to be compatible with our programs, and so that's why they have an incentive and identified as on the qualified products list. And then finally, to educate communities that may not have much experience or exposure to EVs on the benefits of electricity as a fuel. It's not listed here, but one of the things that we'll be doing is working to do some education and awareness activities at those sites that are receiving these chargers. And so hopefully the goal would be is to compel those folks who may not have otherwise considered owning an EV to consider one. I see a question here.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in.
Yeah.
It looks like Phil had a question about limits on how many chargers per facility.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways I can answer. So yes, there are limits on how many chargers that can be at a facility. I would say that the upper limit for chargers at a facility are 12, and the lower limit for chargers at a location is 4. And so we have some, I won't get into the kind of the details or the minutia, but I think that what we recognize is that we want to install the right number of chargers for that location. We don't want to, and especially when parking is kind of a premium at some of these spots. So we don't want to kind of flood the zone with chargers at a property where it's not quite needed yet. And so we want to be kind of responsible and flexible to be able to work with folks on that. Yeah, will you hold those commercial owners to the same standards for uptime, payment time, et cetera? Yeah, I think that the idea would be is we would be monitoring the chargers for uptime. We will not have any type of clawback or anything like that if they are not meeting those standards, but we will be monitoring that for future rate and tariff program design. But there's not any plans to have any kind of stick associated with those not being working all the time. Yeah, roger that. So for long-term strategy, we'll add some requirements for uptime and payment type. We'll also develop rate and tariff structure that is scalable and modular to support make-ready in the various use cases. We'll develop demand response programs that are compelling and attractive to EV drivers at commercial and multifamily locations, while also being able to demonstrate or have demonstrable grid benefits for PGE. We'll develop a program that's responsive to the needs and challenges of electric vehicle drivers and potential EV drivers in these underserved / multifamily communities. And finally, support EV drivers that are not residents of single family housing with access to EV charging. As we know right now, I think 80%, 90% of EV drivers live in single family housing. And so as if we want to expand the number of drivers, we're going to need to address the needs of those folks who are not living in single family housing. And I think that number for PGE is 40% of our customers don't live in single family housing, and Andy's on the call and he can correct me if I'm wrong. So we need to come up with solutions for those folks. And so that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Let's see here. Reading the question. So
yeah, Phil, it looks like you had a question about if it would be possible to stage future installations. So a condo garage can be fully electrified.
It's a great question. So I would say yes. The short answer is yes. The way that we have it structured for this kind of 3 years of the program is that a customer would be able to install, in kind of your example, we could do 12. I think the idea is to do 12 make ready with only 6 chargers, with the idea that they would install future chargers in the years down the road. We haven't gotten to the point of being able to kind of go beyond that kind of min-max, but we would be able to work with them to provide the infrastructure kind of for what is needed now, and then kind of projecting into what is needed in the future within that boundary. Let's see here.
John, it looks like you had a question too about the MMC, that we intended to require site hosts to set rates at cost of service for the first 10 years. Is that correct? And if so, if they are responsible for that, how will we ensure they're staying on cost of service?
That's a great question, and one that we've talked a lot about. So I think the short answer is that we will be monitoring it for future programs. So we will be asking these sites for what they're setting those prices at. And if we find that there's kind of a significant variance and kind of an unreasonable variance for the rates that they're charging their residents or customers, we'll address that through future rate and or program design, but there will not be a requirement for a particular price that's set.
Yes, Alicia, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, Darren was spot on with that we don't have requirements yet in pricing and want to learn through these pilots what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction too. These are learning pilots for us to explore this kind of information, and they'll inform a larger program, a scalable solution. So we need to get this experience and see how this works out in the wild. That's part of the goals of exactly this activity.
Yeah. I see the follow on from John's question here. So yes, we are monitoring, but I think what we're going to do when we install these chargers is provide some guidance to folks as far as what is an appropriate price to be charging for charging. I would imagine many people don't know, what a typical cost is for charging or what a retail cost is for charging. And so, what we've seen is EV drivers. And I know I've had the conversations with people as an EV driver where they say, how much did your electric bill go up when you got your car? Did it go up like $200 a month? And it's like, no, it's not that expensive at all. And so, I could understand and would expect that there'd be people who wouldn't know what an appropriate rate is for charging for EV charging. And so there could be some, misunderstanding as far as that's concerned. So we'll do our best to communicate and educate these properties on what an appropriate rate is, with the thought in mind. And that's part of the application process and the engagement process, is to make sure that they actually want people to use it. If you're installing the charging without kind of and then want to kind of price gouge people to use it, I don't think that's going to be, and that's not what we're intending. So we'll have some conversations about that, so that we can make sure that that does not become an issue.
Right. Just to follow up, that was not the impression that Cub had from the monthly metering charge. And particularly for residential multifamily sites, we're concerned about this because realistically, customers, can't be expected to park their car very far from where they live for long durations, 2 to 4 hours. So in a sense, they're somewhat captive to the options immediately available to them. So we do see potential for price gouging, and we're just very reluctant to give up rate making protections in a situation where there's a potentially captive clientele. Yeah. So the more protections PGE can put forth through contracting through its Make Ready programs, the better we think that is. And that is especially true for customers at low income multifamily locations, because maybe you could argue that site hosts wouldn't want to price gouge because they could scare away, the people, their renters, and that's a bigger source of income. But in a low income housing situation, right, how feasible is it for someone to move because they're getting price gouged at their EVSE? It's not very feasible. So they're kind of stuck with whatever rate the site host sets, which is again a scary prospect.
John, can I help out a little bit here? This is Jason. This goes to PGE's role and what we can or cannot enforce, or what we should or should not put into our T's and C's. So this meter will take service from a PGE rate, and then the charger will charge the customer. But there's infrastructure costs here that have to be recovered by the site host. And us charging a certain amount, right? Or telling them they can only charge a certain amount may have the inadvertent effect of scaring away participants to this program. What we want to do is put these chargers out there, understand what these relationships are supposed to be like, understand how to construct them in order to protect the customer, protect the customer that put the infrastructure in place, the customer that is charging, and the community that's using them. That is a complex formula, and this is why we're running these now at these sort of smaller sizes and smaller investments, so that we can start to answer some of these questions, better understand our role, and better understand how to manage the points of anxiety that you are pointing out.
Thanks for that clarification, Jason. Look forward to staying engaged over this.
Great. Hey, Darren, if you feel we've addressed this, go ahead and wrap over the next minute or two so we can move on to fleet. Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate the time. I'm sure that there'll be many more questions about this, and unfortunately I don't have enough time to kind of go through all of them. This is an exciting and emerging space to be working in, and so really appreciate all the feedback on how we can make this better for the and impactful for those people that will receive it. So thank you very much, and I'll kick it over to Kai.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. And those are excellent questions, John and Phil. This being a learning pilot, this is exactly the kind of thing that we're looking to dig into, and it'll certainly inform how we move forward. If we get the next slide, please. All right, Stephanie is going to speak to us about the fleet partner work. So go ahead, Steph, you've got the mic.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ryder. I am part of the transportation electrification team with a focus on fleets. So the Fleet Partner Program is a program that's already in market today. The original pilot was approved in July of 2021 and will go through 2024. It's been a very successful pilot to date. We have 24 customers have reserved all of the funding. And we expect to be building out those sites over the next year and a half or so. We have received over 90 applications for this, so we have a very healthy pipeline. As such, as part of the TE plan, we are proposing to expand the Fleet Partner pilot. And really, this program is intended to provide free upfront planning and technical services to reduce the complexity of planning for fleet electrification. We also provide custom incentives to help lower the costs of building electric fleet depots. And we're really trying to understand how fleet size and load profiles impact the grid, and also to be installing networked and DR-enabled EV chargers for future programs. So what is changing from the original pilot to this new expansion? For the most part, not much. We've got some really good processes and protocols in place, most of which will remain the same. However, we are going to be testing out a lower incentive. So we are going to be reducing the incentive by 50% and also lowering that maximum incentive cap. So the original pilot takes the year 5 usage times the line extension allowance times 15 years. And with the expansion of the pilot, we are going to be taking that year 5 usage times that LEA times 7.5. And this is all to figure out and to learn what is that right incentive level for customers. The original pilot is we are going to be installing about 450 make-ready ports. And with this expansion of the pilot, we'll be installing about 500 make-ready ports. So we're able to stretch our dollars a little bit further and assist additional customers. We're really looking towards load management in the future. So as I mentioned, all of the chargers that are going in the ground are required to be networked, and they're from our qualified products list so that we can perform demand response on them in the future, where we expect participants to participate in those future demand response programs. Our target market is non-residential fleets. As I mentioned before, in total, we expect to install about 950 make-ready ports. Are there any questions on this? I will note that the budgets between the original pilot and this expansion are relatively similar, but as I mentioned before, so about 7 million. But we're going to be able to expand those dollars or extend those dollars to additional customers to get even more ports in the ground. I think we can go to the next slide if there aren't any questions. So to go through our fleet partner customer journey, generally a customer is interested in fleet electrification. They will learn of the program either through our business outreach team, through emails, through LinkedIn ads, or potentially a web search. The customer can then go to our website, apply online, and our team reaches out and sets up a kickoff meeting. We give that customer a thorough overview of the program while gathering customer information like vehicles, number of vehicles, miles driven per day, various operational data, so that we can help them figure out what it is what their plan is going to look like. We then provide what we call a fleet partner study. And this is a report in a sense that includes anything and everything that this customer might need to know in order to electrify their fleet. This has been a really great tool and business case for customers to take to their leadership to gain approval to move forward with their fleet electrification plans. So at this point, once they gain that approval, the customer commits to the build phase of the program, and they submit a reservation form that says, yep, we're in, we're going to reserve our incentive funds. As I mentioned before, for the original pilot, all of those funds are currently reserved. So we then move into final designs. The customer approves those final designs. This is where they enroll, and they have their 10-year energy commitment as part of that enrollment. We then move into construction. We complete all of that make-ready infrastructure. And then the customer is responsible for procuring, installing, owning, maintaining, and operating the chargers that go in the ground. Those EV drivers take service, and then they're ready to go. On the back end, PGE will receive that charging session data for 10 years. And that's really intended to help us inform future grid planning.
Hey, Jeff, I see a question from you in chat there. So for fleets that are participating in the original pilot, what's the anticipated mix between light, medium, and heavy duty?
Oh, that's a great question. It's about 80-20, so 80% light duty and 20% heavy duty. I can follow up with greater detail of that if needed. No problem. Are there any other questions? All right, we can probably move to the next slide then. What percent are private sector? Off the top of my head, I want to say about 40%. Our largest customer segment are municipalities, followed by private sector. And Eric, I can give you those exact numbers here after the call. See if I can pull it up before the meeting's over. All right, yep, I think we can move to the next.
We do have a question regarding private sector. What percent are private sector from Eric?
I just answered that. I think it's about 40%.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll follow up with the exact number. And just a note on that original pilot, we've already kicked off our evaluation for the original. So a lot of these details are going to be coming out in our evaluation that we will be releasing later this year. So our fleet long-term strategy, again, we're going to be pivoting from accelerating electrification to supporting fleet electrification. And really it's, with this expansion, it's learning. We need to learn about the target market size and timing and budgeting, construction, fleet size, port counts, all of the load profiles. And that's really going to help us inform what the rate tariffs and rate structures are going to look like in the future. Lastly, I just mentioned this as well. We do have third-party evaluations that have kicked off and will continue that are going to help us inform these future strategies. So what do these shifts really look like? Again, we're stretching those dollars so that we can assist a greater pipeline of customers. We're trying to make this program as cost-effective as possible and really help us assist grid operations with planning for new load. We're going to be using learnings about load profiles to create those new tariff and rate designs for longer term. Research and development and testing of flexible load tools. So with the MMC budget that was approved this week, we are really going to be digging into that research and development. There's a lot of different flexible load tools out there, especially for fleet. So we're going to be testing that, figuring out what the most customer-friendly, cost-effective ways we are going to implement those flex load programs. We really want to understand what PGE's make-ready requirements are going to be, both on our side and the customer side. To understand and plan for system impacts of really large fleet electrification that will be coming to the grid. And really being able to set expectations, define all the processes and procedures so that we can engage and direct fleet customers ahead of when they are ready to go. And really make sure that we are ready and we're enabling them to be ready as well. Are there any questions?
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie. If those do come up afterwards, like everyone else, please reach out. We're happy to circle back. We will, for some of the specifics that have come up in the program sections, we will be circling back with you folks on some additional detail there. Let's go ahead and we're going to shift over to Alicia, who's going to talk to us about budgets.
Yeah. So I think you've been able to see on the different project and program slides what the budget has looked like and where the different funding sources are. So I wanted to be able to show you kind of an aggregate, what does that look like? And so, yeah, go ahead. So for you saw it approved in a new column, and the new is really this incremental spend that we're going to be spending in the TE portfolio. What that looks like, so the different types of spending funding mechanisms that are out there, 34% of our portfolio is capital expenditures. 39% of our portfolio will be funded through monthly meter charge budget. 19% will be through the clean fuels program, and then 8% will be through the deferral and O&M functionality. So that's just for that new spend that we're looking at. That's how the breakdown looks like. On the next slide, you'll be able to see what does this look like overall. And for our entire portfolio, what our plan will include is we want to provide, Division 87S looks for that, what is the portfolio of products and programs and infrastructure measures that the utility is undergoing in order to support transportation electrification. So that's why we wanted to be able to show you there are already approved activities that have happened through prior approval processes, whether it was the 2022 monthly meter charge budget that was filed and approved last year, whether it's the 2023 monthly meter charge budget that was filed and approved this week, or it was previous deferral filings that approved both residential charging or business EV charging. There's a lot of different venues that have had these programs be approved. This is really showing the complete amount of activity that's going on in the TE portfolio during this time frame of 23 through 25. So let's talk through what does this look like. So we wanted to
Alicia,
show the
looks like-
budget in regards to those programs that are funded through customer rates and those other activities that are going to be funded through the Clean Fuels program. So
Sorry,
when you
Alicia,
look
to
on,
interrupt. It looks like Eric had a question about.
oh, Eric, perfect.
Yeah. What does the approved reflect unspent approved?
Was approved unspent approved? So yes, so approved is the amount that has not been spent but was approved through those different filings. Great call. No, I'm so sorry. That's not quite right. Heavy duty is showing the overall approved amount, Eric. But there has been spending on that program. So my apologies on that. You're welcome. So for that approved line, you can see what it was approved. In that new line, you can see that for municipal charging collaboration, the new dollar amount that we're looking at spending there. For the residential smart charging pilot, we talked about how we're moving some of those funds to be covered by MMC. So part of that is in the approved buckets. It's an approved program up to 5,000 customers. And so that additional spend is the 175. And then for the business and multifamily make ready rebates, we have a portion of that's been funded through the 2023 monthly meter charge budget. That 453 is what's really being funded through the Clean Fuels program. We just wanted to show you a holistic perspective on that program so you wouldn't have to go between the two charts to see what does that look like for how that program is evolving and what that total spend looks like. And then as you move down, we broke up the fleet partner pilots into the two different phases. So you have phase one, and then that phase two would be the incremental spend there. And then lastly, the portfolio enablement, which includes money for federal dollars for modeling, and then a budget data analyst as well. So at the bottom, you can kind of see what is that incremental spend. So that's how that chart on the previous page was looking at, was that the 19 million there, which is a mixture of those different funding sources that you could see. And then for the increment, when you look at the activities funded through the Clean Fuels program, you can see the different breakdown in the dollars. I think, no, I can't remember if it was you who had earlier had said, hey, how do the different funding structures look like? So Eva went through the different funding structure, the different programs that are within the Clean Fuels programs. Oh, and I do see a question there, but just want to make sure people could see what do those different funding structures look like, and then see where that multifamily make ready rebates goes into it.
Jason?
Yeah, sorry. Eric's question about spent and unspent, I'm not sure that we answered it well enough for him.
Okay.
I think some of these approved dollars, as Alicia was pointing out, are unspent. So there's the 10 million for heavy duty. Not all of the dollars, since some of them were just recently approved this last week through the MMC. So not all of those dollars have actually been spent. Eric, if you need a breakdown of what has been spent or deployed in the field, be happy to send that over to you.
And then Eric, your second question was, is new only for calendar year 2023, or is it for the total new expenditures for the 3-year budget? The new is for the 3-year budget, which, anticipating how our plan will get approved, we don't anticipate that those would probably get spent until 2024 or 2025, potentially in 2023, depending on the timing of the overall approval of our TE plan. All right, you're welcome. Are there other questions? The one thing I just want to make sure was also really clear, so you can see in the different sub notes, the call that I had around that 453 and make ready, it was just showed in parentheses so you can see that program view, but the dollars are really over in the Clean Fuels bucket to show where the funding is actually coming from. And then the 2024 through 2025 total dollars, that's why you see that asterisk by that. Those are really based on a forecast. So the funding amounts will depend on how many credits are generated from residential customers and what those credit sales look like, which is always subject to market and regulatory risk. So I just want to be able to show the forecast of what we anticipate based on the credit prices and number of EVs we anticipate being in our service area. This is a lot of data, so I just want to pause right here and make sure you have a chance to absorb before we move on.
I expect this slide is going to generate some questions, and we'll have this deck out to everyone that's invited shortly. So we're happy to field those offline. If there is additional discussion that's needed on this topic in particular, we can reconvene with folks if that's warranted. So we'll kind of gauge what questions we're hearing from y'all. And we'll move ahead from there. So please do let us know if you have follow-ons that weren't addressed today.
All right. It's okay. I think if there aren't, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat nor hands raised. I think we just need to talk through some next steps then on what does this look like as we prepare for filing.
Okay, Shandi, if you could take us forward to that next step slide, please. Thank you so much. Alicia, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware. Our whole goal today was to be able to talk through. We had workshops last year. We've been working on what does this look like in light of all the activities going on with PG as well as our changing role in the market. And so I want to bring all of you along with us as we're getting prepared to file our TE plan draft. So we're going to be filing our TE plan draft on June 1st. We've been able to work through dates with the PUC and other stakeholders, and it looks like our final filing will be due on August 25th. So we want to hear comments from you all today. And so you'll have the meeting materials that you can go and reference. They'll be up on our website within a week, and that address is there. And then if you've got more information or questions, you can email us at tep@pgn.com or via a feedback form. So we really want to be able to hear from you so that we can be able to take comments and considerations into it while we finish drafting up our final draft and getting that submitted. The comments today won't be the final time. There's multiple periods of being able to add comments and provide input on the plan even after we file our draft plan on June 1st. So after our draft filing, you can also submit comments via that docket UM 2033.
Yeah, and clearly the purpose of these meetings, folks, and thank you all for making it here, is to engage with y'all ahead of time. And if we can have these conversations, I think it saves both yourselves and PGE quite a bit of time on the back end. If we can address some of these questions up front, we can meet the needs of this market much more efficiently on the back end. So thank you, Alicia. Let me go ahead and recap. We had a couple of questions that came up that we will circle back with the team on. Phil, you'd asked for some contact information for the team. We will provide that, as well as some clarification regarding the municipal rates that came up, and then we heard you regarding the idle time questions and standards. If there are additional follow-up there that you'd like to dig into, please let us know, and then Eric will provide a drill down into the amount approved and what has been spent thus far. So this is great. We do have time here, so I want to give some room to ask some questions. So I'll pause for just a minute before we close.
This is Phil Barnhart. I was going to do this privately, but it might make sense to simply raise the issue. Many of the condominiums in Portland are structured in such a way that an owner owns the unit that they live in. They also own a parking space in the parking garage, separate from everyone else. That's a different model than a rental where parking would be assigned by the landlord or the landlord's agent or free for all. The model that you're proposing for electrification in multi-unit dwellings is, as I perceive it right now, is not likely to work very well for condominiums where spaces are individually owned by owners of the condominiums themselves. So that's something to think about and try to think about how you would manage that. It's much more akin to a single family dwelling with a difficult issue in terms of actually getting electricity to the parking space in that individual dwelling. So the limitations that you're talking about in the number of chargers you're willing to install could easily be a problem. Now, it isn't today, but it could easily become a problem later.
Bill, that's an excellent question. And let me hand the mic over at Alicia. I think you want to take a first run at this. And
Yeah, Phil, I think you raised such a great issue that is out there. I had the opportunity to go and visit with one of the condominiums downtown that has a garage where the owners do definitely have deeded parking spaces. And it's interesting to me to see what a mixture they are between commercial and residential. And when you think about our role for making sure that we're providing that the infrastructure and the make ready, what does that look like? And really, when you think about managed charging, you are spot on. They look and act a lot more like a residential single family home. And so we're going to be looking at our programs to see where do they really fit in and where do we want to make sure that we're working with them. And I think the hard part is not all multifamily is the same. So how do we work for renters where there's a multifamily complex that is not for ownership, but it is for rentals, and then making sure that we're making our programs work for all of the different customer segments that we have.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. As we get into mid-adoption for electric vehicles, I suspect that condo owners will be among those who will be most likely to buy an electric vehicle if they can charge at the parking space they already own.
I see that same thing, and it was just interesting to be able to look at the garage and see the different complexities that are definitely involved as they look at working with their group of owners, as well as making sure that the parking garage can accommodate the infrastructure that's needed as well.
Yeah, not simple. It's a big issue, and I appreciate the fact that you're looking at it.
Yeah, no problem.
great. Phil, thanks for bringing that up. You know, we probably saved about 3 or 4 emails back and forth there. So that kind of engagement's super important for us. I hope you found the format today helpful. I want to say thank you to our DSP team for helping us up level what we're doing. And then also for the understanding of folks regarding some of the technical issues that we had. I'm going to go and look and see if we're running our comms cables through the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. You know, maybe we've got some nefarious actors there. No, I'm kidding. But thank you very much for your patience. If you have any input or feedback, Charlie, thank you. I see that. Anything that you think we can adjust moving forward, we would love to hear that too. These meetings are for you. We are looking to get this engagement up front so we can be much more nimble in the way that we bring these forward to the public. So with that, I will close and say thank you to all the presenters. Thank you to the attendees for the great questions. And we'll look forward to that deck in the coming days, as well as the recording. Cheers.